Hey everybody, Brentley here. Now I'm going to take the time to talk about the 4 different Javelins that we'll get to pilot in Anthem. We're going to talk about the Ranger, the Colossus, the Interceptor, and the Storm. Let's talk about what they can do and what they can't do. Alright, so each of the 4 Javelins is going to have its own unique ability. Each Javelin can have two weapons for their loadout, and you can change them, along with the rest of their loadout, between missions. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Ranger. It's probably the most well-balanced of the 4. The Ranger is capable of wielding every weapon type except for heavy weapons. Let's talk about the Ranger's melee ability. It can deploy an electrified mace that sends a high voltage through its enemies, incapacitating them. The Ranger is also equipped with grenade gear, so it's quick to deploy. Grenades lay down an area damage for effective crowd control, and modified grenades can be found out in the field and can be equipped to create different effects, such as frost, freezing your enemies, or seeker grenades. So if we look at the different grenades, we've got 5 different types. We've got a frag grenade, which deals impressive damage in large area of effect. Inferno grenade ignites an area, dealing damage and setting enemies on fire. Frost grenade, of course, like it says, damages and freezes enemies in place. Seeker grenade splits into smaller sub-ammunitions which seek out the nearest enemy. And then the sticky bomb, which attaches to a single target for contained high damage blast. So the Ranger can also be equipped with an assault launcher. So basically, the Ranger has his wrist launcher, which allows for a variety of modules to be loaded on for an extra burst of firepower. Now, this provides a more flexible combat approach that can take down threats very quickly. Now this wrist launcher, the assault gear, can be equipped with a homing missile, which fires a projectile that seeks out a target for a small area of effect explosion. Energy pulse, which unleashes a blast of pure energy hitting a single target with incredible force. A spark beam, which fires a sustained beam of energy for continuous damage. Venom darts launches a volley of darts that seek out a target for acid damage. And a blast missile fires a missile that explodes for area of effect damage. And the Javelin also comes with support gear. So a skillful field general, the Ranger is capable of creating special fields that allow its allies to gain a tactical advantage, which can include a bulwark point, which deploys a spherical field which deflects incoming enemy projectiles. And there's also a muster point, which creates a field which increases weapon damage for teammates who enter its radius. But the note here says, in a previous article this ability had been listed as reducing gear cooldown. The ability has been changed to increase weapon power damage instead. And lastly, the Ranger's ultimate ability is a multi-target missile battery, which says here, Lancers can deploy a special ultimate ability that displays the truth strength of their Javelin exosuit, dealing precise damage across a wide swath of battlefield. The Ranger's multi-target missile battery allows it to target many fast-moving enemies with guided projectiles. So next up is the Colossus. Consider this guy the Hulkbuster of the bunch. Now the Colossus, he cannot use the 2 smallest weapon types, pistols and SMGs, but is the only Javelin sturdy enough to wield any of the heavy weapons. Now the Colossus melee ability, it uses a massive chassis as a weapon, both in a diving smash attack from the air and as a hammering melee attack. So this not only clears out smaller enemies, it also has a chance to knock down foes and leave the open to follow-up attacks. Now the Colossus comes with a ordnance launcher gear, which, utilizing the incredible strength of Colossus, These shoulder-mounted weapons are capable of dishing out punishment to enemies near or far. And there's 5 types. You have a high explosive mortar, which launches an explosive projectile that deals heavy area of effect damage. A burst mortar, which fires a volley of smaller mortars that spread out to pummel a wider area. And then there's the firewall mortar, which fires a specialized mortar round that ignites a wall of flame, heavily damaging enemies inside of it. The lightning coil strikes a single random target with an arc of electricity in front of the Colossus, prioritizing targets with a status effect. And then there's the shock coil, which emits waves of electricity out from the Colossus, damaging all nearby enemies. The Colossus is also equipped with a heavy assault launcher gear, and what that is, it allows the Colossus for a fitting of number of wrist-mounted weapons that can complement as other destructive options. So you have a heavy cannon, which fires a large rocket in a targeted direction, flamethrower, which does just as it says, it ignites enemies on fire, a flak cannon, which barrages nearby enemies with a short-range arc of projectiles, a railgun, which devastates a single target with a forceful and precise kinetic round, and the acid spitter, which expels an acid projectile to damage enemies. The support gear for the Colossus is kind of the preeminent battle tank Javelin, so it's capable of supporting its allies by decreasing incoming damage or diverting enemy fire towards itself. So it has what's called taunt, which forces all enemies within a certain radius to divert their attacks towards the Colossus. And then there's the deflector pulse, which gives all nearby allies a damage resistance buff. And lastly, there's the ultimate ability for the Colossus, which is called the siege cannon. It's ideal for clearing out smaller enemies, controlling enemies in a choke point, or putting some extra damage on a boss. If the Ranger is considered the balanced Javelin here, you know, the all-around, say, the Audi, and the Colossus he's the big hulky tank, say, a Hummer. Well, the Interceptor is going to be the Porsche, maybe the McLaren of the bunch. It's fast, it's agile, its ability of melee is like a ninja. Let's dive into the weaponry here. The Interceptor's melee ability is very unique. It has what's called double-bladed daggers. The Interceptor uses a pair of double-bladed daggers to deliver a multi-hit flurry of slashes, dealing damage in a chain of powerful attacks that can be continued indefinitely. The Interceptor's assault systems. It has Seeker Glaive, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, throws out a razor-sharp projectile that seeks out the nearest target. Acid Bomb tosses a grenade which explodes, splashing all nearby enemies with acid. Cryo Glaive launches out a projectile that locks onto a nearby target and freezes it on impact. Cluster Mine throws out a group of mines onto a targeted area which explode on contact with an enemy. And then Spark Dash dashes forward, leaving behind a trail of electricity that damages enemies. The Interceptor's strike systems. So it has Star Strike, charges an enemy with energy which explodes after delay. The explosion deals increased damage if the target is destroyed before the full delay. It also comes with Plasma Star, tosses a plasma-empowered Shuriken throwing star at a single target effective at long range. Nova Strike sends out a projection of the Interceptor which will attack enemies it comes in contact with, so kind of like astral projection or like a ghost of itself. Tempest Strike, a devastating single target attack that can stun smaller enemies. And Corrosive Spray sprays out a jet of corrosive acid that damages all enemies hit by it. Let's take a look at the Interceptor support system. It has what's called Target Beacon, marks a target for increased damage which will switch to another enemy if the marked target is destroyed. And it also has Rally Cry, removes status effects from all nearby allies. And lastly, the Interceptor's ultimate ability, called Assassin's Blades. It says here, Lancers can deploy a special ultimate ability that displays the true strength of their Javelin exosuit. The Interceptor becomes supercharged, arming its Assassin's Blades and carving through enemies at high speed. The Storm Javelin is an exosuit that's basically kind of your elemental type out of the 4 different javelins. Think of it as lightning in a bottle. It just unleashes holy hell. Now the Storm's melee ability is called Fiery Strike. The Storm uses the seals on its arm to deliver an explosive flash that deals damage and knocks back enemies that have gotten too close, giving the Storm time to reposition at a safe distance and basically attack again. Now it possesses what's called Kinesis Gear abilities, and it's called Storm Javelin Blast Seals. And what they can do is Lightning Strike, targeted strike that deals lightning damage in an area. Ice Storm creates a field of ice that deals damage rapidly, building to a final explosion of frost. Flame Burst, a quick explosion that deals fire damage at a target location. Rime Blast fires out a flurry of ice projectiles that deal damage and freeze close-range targets. And then lastly, Living Flame, a burst of flame energy that seeks out and ignites its targets. Its next ability is called Focus Seals. It has Hoarfrost Shards, rapid-fire shards of ice that slowly freeze a target in place. Fireball, a versatile fire ability that can be fired quickly in small shots or charged for a larger projectile that explodes. Ball Lightning, a discharge of electric energy that can be bounced off of walls to reach targets behind cover. Glacier Beam fires a beam of powerful ice energy in a targeted direction. And lastly, Arc Burst unleashes a blast of lightning that will leap to nearby targets for heavy damage. Now the Storm's support abilities include Wind Wall, generates a defensive wall of wind that deflects incoming enemy projectiles, and Nexus creates a field which prevents gear cooldown reduction to teammates who enter its radius. Now the Storm's ultimate ability is called Elemental Storm. It says here, manipulating the raw forces of the Anthem, the Storm emits successive blasts of frost, electricity, and fire, ending with a meteorite finale. Yeah, that does sound badass. Well, there you go, the 4 Javelins of Anthem. I'm gonna wrap this up. If you like this video, hit that like button. As always, subscribe is greatly appreciated. And until next time, see you then.